Well, hello, confirmands. I hope you are well. This is Lutheran Foundations. It's a confirmation curriculum. This is year one. Year one is called It Starts Here, Stories of the Old Testament, and we are, believe it or not, on lesson 27, in which we talk about Esther, who was a queen who saved the Jews. The book of Esther was the last of the books of the Hebrew Bible that were accepted by the rabbis and made part of the canon. Remember, the canon is the authoritative listing of the books that are actually part of something. So the book of Esther was the last of the books accepted into the canon of the Hebrew Bible. It was written 400 or 500 years before Jesus lived, something like that. It has lots of Persian words, it has lots of Persian references in it, although scholars say, and I don't know this, but scholars say that many of the things that are talked about there are somewhere on the continuum from a little inaccurate to just plain wrong. So we're not sure as to whether or not we should regard it as historical or not. There are a lot of scholars who say that we should not regard it as a historical book, as there's real trouble connecting it to the actual history that we have of the Persian Empire. But the Jewish holiday of Purim comes from this story, is commanded in this story. That's a Jewish holiday our Jewish neighbors celebrate to this day. It happens generally in the middle of March, although it moves around some. And for Purim, the people gather in synagogues, they read the whole of the story of Esther. It's fun because every time there's the bad guy in the book is a guy named Haman, and every time Haman's name is mentioned, everyone makes noise. They have ratchets, noisemakers, or they make lots of noise to drown out his name. So it happens 54 times in the book. Haman's name comes up, and every time they try to drown it out, Haman tried to blot out the Jews. And the Jews now repay the favor by blotting out Haman. When you celebrate Purim, you give gifts of food and drink to your neighbors. You give alms. Remember, alms is giving money or support to the poor. You're going to have a feast. It always has alcoholic beverages, usually wine. And sometimes, the traditions move around a little bit depending on where you are in the Jewish world, but sometimes there's parades, and sometimes there's celebrations, and sometimes there's masquerades. It's a big party, and it is remembering this story of Esther saving the Jews. The book, for you and me, Luther once said that he was sorry that it was ever written down because he couldn't figure out why Christians would need such a book or how it helped us. But one of the things that you and I can see in it is that we can see that there's this idea that God works through human events, that Esther becomes queen in time to save her people. And that sometimes we don't see it till later, but we believe that God has God's hand on the world. And there's also other stuff in there too, the power of hate to make a person blind and foolish and stupid. The power of integrity, of doing the right thing. And you'll find other themes in the book that you think are important. But whatever the historicity of the story, whatever you get out of it, it's a story that has permeated into our culture, that our Jewish neighbors continue to know the story and to celebrate it. And so it doesn't do you any harm at all. In fact, it might do you a world of good to know the story of Esther, at least to be culturally competent in a multi-faith country, in a multi-faith world. All right, so the book itself, it's only 10 chapters long, and chapter 10 is just a stub of a chapter. It would take you about 20 minutes to read it, wouldn't do you any harm at all. And it's funny. There's parts of the story that are very, very funny indeed. So, King Ahasuerus, again, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, is the king, and he is, remember, king of a very large empire, and he has a party, and the party lasts 180 days. Now, again, are we in satire here? That seems just crazy, and there's a description about the furnishings and the wealth and the wine and all of that, and everyone's invited. And at the end of this 180-day party, there's a 7-day feast for everybody in this winter capital of Susa. And while the king is having a party for the men, and there are no restrictions on how drunk people can be, the Queen Vashti, is also having a party for all of the women. Now, the king gets happily drunk and decides he wants to show off the beauty of his wife. And so he sends the eunuchs. A eunuch is a man that's been castrated so that he can't be any danger to the women in a king's harem. There are so many icky parts of this story too, we should have said that. Anyway, the king sends the eunuchs to go get Queen Vashti to bring her before his guests. Again, all men, all drinking heavily. And Queen Vashti hears that and she decides, no, I'm not coming. And so the eunuchs go back to the king and they say, the queen decided not to come. And the king goes from sort of a happy, drunken, I want everyone to see how pretty my wife is, to rage. And he talks to his advisors, what am I going to do about this? And the advisors say, it's even worse than you think, king, because we got all the women there having the party. They all know now that the queen refused your command. They're all going to go home. They're not going to listen to their husbands. All over the empire, from top to bottom, women are going to be deciding that they don't have to do what their men say they have to do. Everything is going to be ruined. Everything is going to be bad. The only thing we can do here is that we've got to depose the queen. We've got to eliminate her as the queen, and we've got to find a better queen, give her her office, her role, to someone who's better than she is. So this makes the king happy. Again, he's drunk and he's mad. You shouldn't make decisions when you're drunk and you're mad, but the king does that. And he deposes the queen, and a decree goes out across the empire that she's been stripped of her station, and that we're going to have a new talent show, beauty pageant, to find a new queen. So the order goes out, and all over the kingdom, all over the empire, the prettiest young virgins are rounded up and they're brought to the capital city, where they go into intensive training under the guidance of the eunuchs. That they're taught manners and they're taught etiquette, and there's a 1-year-long beauty regimen that they do. They get soaked in oils and they learn how to do cosmetics, and it's just yucky. But that's the deal. And then one after another, these young women get brought into the king in an evening. They spend the night together. The king sleeps with her, of course. And then in the morning, these women go into a second harem where they're never heard from again unless the king asks for them by name. So, your whole life, one night with the king. That's it. And you can't marry anybody else. You can't leave. These women are just in this second harem forever. Now, when this word goes out that there's going to be this beauty pageant talent show to find a new queen, there's a young woman named Esther who lives right there in the capital city. She's an orphan. Her parents have died, and she's been raised by her cousin Mordecai. Mordecai is a gatekeeper in the king's palace. He's a Jew, of course, obviously. So is she, and Esther is very beautiful, and she gets scooped up into this collection of lovely young women. Mordecai tells her, don't tell anybody that you're a Jew. Don't tell anybody that you're connected to me. Just do what you're told and be good. And Esther is very gracious. She's very kind. She very quickly becomes one of the favorites of the eunuchs. They give her special care, special food. They have maids wait on her, and when it's her turn to go in to be with the king, to spend the night with the king falls in love with her, and the king decides that this is going to be my new queen, and he puts the crown on Esther's head, and he has a big feast celebrating Esther. and life goes on. Right now, just because the king has a queen doesn't mean he stops sleeping with all these other women who've been gathered. You know, there's the first harem of the women still to sleep with the king, and the second harem, and so for months at a time, the king won't ask for the queen. And there's a rule that nobody can come into the presence of the king unless they're called for at risk of death. And so Esther has her own life, she has her own apartments, she has her own servants, and when the king calls for her, of course, she goes and she joins the king in his bed. But the rest of the time, she has to stay away from him. This rule that you can't go to the king unsolicited. If you just show up in front of the king, he has a golden scepter, and if he holds that out to you, you live, and if he doesn't, you die. So you're taking your life in your hands if you show up unsolicited, and Esther, that becomes her life. Now, her cousin, Mordecai, continues to work for the king. He continues to work at the gate of the palace. And one day Mordecai overhears a couple of the king's servants plotting to assassinate the king. And he sends word to Esther. Esther sends word to the king, says, you know, Mordecai, your gatekeeper, sent word to me that there's an assassination plot, and these are the guys who are behind it, and you probably want to check them out. So the king's secret police, or whatever he's got, they do an investigation. They find out that those two guys actually were planning to assassinate the king, and those two guys are promptly hung. Mordecai doesn't get any reward or any mention of any kind. The whole thing is written down in the logs or the annals of the kingdom, but life returns very quickly to normal. As time goes on, the king starts giving more and more responsibility to the guy that we talked about before, the bad guy in this story, Haman. Right? And if you want to make noise, you do it. At home, your parents will think that you've gone crazy, but that's kind of fun too, right? So Haman gets more and more authority, and the king trusts him more and more. And the king orders that everybody should bow down to Haman whenever they see him, because he's this high representative of the king. So whenever Haman comes into the palace, everybody bows down except Mordecai, because Mordecai, as a Jew, isn't going to bow down to anyone but God. And Haman doesn't notice this right away, but then some people, maybe they're jealous of Mordecai, maybe they're angry at Mordecai, maybe they just want to stir the pot and make trouble. They start telling Mordecai, you got to bow down every time Haman comes. And Mordecai says, I'm not going to do it. Right? It's against my religion. I'm not going to do it, no matter what happens to me. You can forget it. And so a couple of them tell Haman this. Haman looks for it, and he sees Mordecai doesn't bow down to him, and he's just filled with rage. He is so angry that he wants to kill Mordecai. And then it occurs to him that just killing Mordecai isn't enough. That he finds out that Mordecai is a Jew, and he decides that he wants to kill all Jews everywhere. And again, we said that one of the things to learn from this story is just the incredible stupidity that hatred brings to us. But Haman decides that he wants to kill all Jews everywhere, and he goes to the king and he says, "King, we got trouble." And the king says, "Well, what's the trouble?" And Haman says, there's a group of people living in the middle of the empire that don't listen to you, they don't do your thing, they don't speak our language, they don't obey our laws. I'll tell you what, you let me get rid of them for you, and I think you agree, king, that we got to get rid of them, because these are bad guys. Right? You let me get rid of them, and I will put 10,000 talents of silver into the royal treasury. Now, a talent is a weight. So 75-ish pounds of silver times 10,000. 75 pounds per talent, 10,000 talents. Right? So doing it in my head, that's what, 750,000 pounds of silver that Haman offers to put in the treasury if the king will let him kill the Jews. And the king says, go. They throw dice to figure out, this is the first month of the year, they throw dice to figure out, when the axe should drop. This rolling the dice is Pur, and so the holiday our Jewish neighbors celebrate is Purim, right? That's where that comes from. They throw the dice, and it lands on the 13th day of the 12th month is going to be the day. And Haman, in the king's name, sends out letters across the empire saying that on this 13th day of the 12th month, everybody everywhere in the empire can kill any Jew they want to kill, and they can take all their stuff. There are always people who would be interested in that sort of thing. And so the command goes out, and all across the empire, Jews can't believe what they're hearing. I mean, they've got businesses and families, and they're well integrated into the society in many ways, economically for sure. What did we ever do to deserve this? That we're all going to be exterminated? And across the empire, there's wailing, there's crying, there's tearing of clothes, there's wearing sackcloth, there's dressing in ashes. And Mordecai is obviously one of the first to get the news that this is going to happen when the proclamation is made. And Mordecai tears his clothes and puts ashes on his head and wears sackcloth and is wandering around. Now he can't do his job. He can't be a gatekeeper while he's dressed in sackcloth, right, and in ashes. And Esther's gotten very accustomed to being able to watch him come and go. And it's a little bit nostalgic. It's a little bit, lovely. That this is the one who finished raising me, and I care for him, and suddenly he's not there. So she sends her eunuchs out to find out what happened to Mordecai. They find him in sackcloth and ashes. They come back and tell Esther, he's wailing, he's walking through the streets crying, he's wearing sackcloth and ashes. Esther sends clothes for him. He won't take the clothes. He tells the eunuchs what's going on. He shows them the proclamation. He says, give this to Queen Esther and tell her that she has to do something to save her people. And that she shouldn't imagine that just being the queen is going to protect her. This decree that's gone out, this unchangeable decree that's gone out, says that all Jews everywhere should be killed, and she's got to do something. Right now, Esther, reminds him of this law that she can't go to the king unsolicited. That if she is, she's taking her life in her hands. Mordecai again says, your life is in trouble right now. And Esther sends back a message: tell all the Jews in town to fast and pray for 3 days. I'll do the same thing, and then I'll go to the king. I'll see what happens. I'll take a shot. And so. That's what happens. On the third day, Esther puts on her royal robes and her crown and gets herself all gussied up, and she goes and she stands in the royal court. The king looks up from his throne. He sees the queen. His heart's filled with love. He holds out the scepter to her. She approaches and he says, what do you need? I'll give you anything that you need, up to half my kingdom. What can I do for you? And she says, I would like you and Haman to come to dinner at my apartments tonight. And the king says, awesome, we're happy to do that, aren't we, Haman? And Haman's like, absolutely, we're happy to do that. So all day long, Haman's floating on cloud nine. He's going to have dinner with the king and the queen. He's the most important guy in the whole world. Everyone should be like him. And he's just floating. Evening comes, they have the dinner in the queen's apartments. After dinner, they're having an after-dinner glass of wine, and the king again says to Esther, what do you need? Just tell me what you want, and I'm happy to give it to you, up to half my kingdom. And Esther says, I would like you and Haman to come again to another dinner tomorrow night, and then I will tell you what it is I want. And the king says, okie doke, and Haman is so excited about this, that he's so important, and so he agrees too. So Haman goes home, and he sees, on his way out, he sees Mordecai, and Mordecai doesn't bow down to him. And he is just filled with rage. That he goes from way up here emotionally to way down here emotionally, because he had this beautiful time, this beautiful private dinner with the king and the queen, and now Mordecai, the gatekeeper, won't even bow down to him. And so he goes home and he's just in a towering rage. And he tells his wife and he tells all his friends what's going on. And his wife says, let's get rid of this guy, right? Build a gallows and tomorrow morning go ask the king if you can hang Mordecai. The king loves you. And then, you kill Mordecai and then you go to dinner with the queen and the king. It'll be a great, great day for you. And this sounds like really good advice to Haman, and he sends his servants out to build a gallows 50 cubits high. That's 75-ish feet, something like that. So a huge gallows to hang Mordecai from. And then he goes to sleep while his servants are building that. Meanwhile, back at the palace, the king is unable to sleep. He can't get to sleep, and so just to pass the time, he orders his servants to read from the royal records. That maybe that will help him get to sleep. And so the servants do that, and just by chance, of course, again, the point of the story is that God works through human events. They read the story of how Mordecai had warned of the assassination attempt, and the king says to his servants, wait, what did we ever do for that guy? And the servants said, we didn't do anything for him. He's still a gatekeeper. He's still, working for the minimum wage. We didn't do anything. And the king says, well, we got to fix this. Now, by this time, it is very early morning, and he hears someone come into the outer court. And he said, who's there in the outer court? And the servants say, well, it's Haman. And the king says, bring him in. And so Haman gets brought into the presence of the king. And the king says to Haman, I got a question for you. What should I do for someone that I really, really want to honor? And Haman thinks the king's talking about him, right? He's got these dinners with the king and the queen. He's got all this authority. He can do whatever he wants to do. And Haman is sure that the king wants to honor him. So he says, here's what you got to do, king. You got to take some of your robes you've worn, and put them, have one of your princes, right? You have one of your most important people. Dress this guy in your royal robes. Have one of your princes put this guy on your royal horse. And then have one of your princes lead the horse through the town yelling, this is what happens for someone that the king wishes to honor. And the king says, that sounds great. Okay, so what I want you to do, Haman, is I want you to get some of my robes. I want you to get my horse. I want you to go scoop up Mordecai. I want you to dress him up, put him on the horse. Do everything that you just said for Mordecai, and then honor him. And so Haman has to honor Mordecai. He's gone from, I'm going to ask the king to let me kill him, to now he has to honor him. So he has to dress him, he puts him on the horse, he leads him around town. He's just dying. And in the afternoon, when he's done with this, he covers his head and he goes home in just profound shame. And he tells his wife and his friends what's happened, and they're like, you in trouble. And he is so upset that he forgets that he's got this dinner with the king and the queen, and their messengers have to come from the palace and say, let's go. You're supposed to be at the palace. So Haman hot-foots it to the palace, and they have the dinner, and again after dinner they're drinking wine, and the king says to Queen Esther, now listen, what do you need? Whatever you want. I love you. Up to half my kingdom. I will give it to you. What do you want? And Esther says, Your Majesty, I don't know how to say it. There is someone trying to kill me. And not just me, but all of my people too. And the king says, What? And Esther says, if they were just going to make my people slaves, okay, but this is going to really be a loss to your Majesty, losing me and losing all of my people. And I thought you'd want to know about that, and I'm begging you to save me. And the king says, who would do such a thing? Who would threaten my queen? And Queen Esther says, well, Haman. And the king is filled with rage. And he goes stomping out of the room into the garden to cool down. I mean, he is just on the edge of personal violence, right? That Haman this guy that he trusted, is threatening his queen. Meanwhile, Haman panics and he throws himself across Esther's legs. She's on a reclining couch of some kind for the meal, and he throws himself across her legs to plead for his life. And the king comes in and sees Haman draped across the queen, and he says, "What, now you're going to assault my queen in my palace?" And the eunuchs step in from the shadows and they put a bag over Haman's head. They know that Haman is not going to see the dawn. And the king says, what should I do with him? And the servants say, well, he just built a scaffolding to hang Mordecai. And the king says, really? Hang him on that scaffolding. So they drag Haman out and they hang him from the gallows that he had built to kill Mordecai. And then the king gives all of Haman's lands and estates to Mordecai, and then says to Esther, now what can I do for you? And Esther says, you gotta save us. But remember, this is one of those laws that can't be changed. And so the king talks to his advisors, and they send out a new law that on this 13th day of the 12th month, there is still going to be this right for everyone around the country, around the empire, to attack, kill Jews, and to take all of their stuff. But the Jews in every part of the country are allowed to mobilize, they're allowed to gather together, they're allowed to defend themselves, they're allowed to kill anyone that comes against them, and they are allowed to take those people's stuff. And just to tip the balance a little more, all the governors and military officers and people around the empire, they hear that Mordecai is now the new highest figure in the king's court, and they want to be on Mordecai's good side. So they help the Jews all around the empire. So on this 13th day of the 12th month, there are people who try to attack the Jews, and they wind up getting killed. But the Jews don't take any of their stuff, right? They just defend themselves. They don't take any of their stuff. And this happens all through the empire, that instead of being destroyed, the Jews are suddenly stronger, safer than they have ever been. And again, the story ends with Mordecai having this incredibly high position. He's not a gatekeeper anymore. This incredibly high position in the king's court. Esther is a beautiful and faithful queen. The Jews have more security than they ever had, and the king happily goes about his life, passing laws and pulling women out of his first harem into his second. That part continues to be icky. All right, so that's the story, and that from then on, our Jewish neighbors celebrate this festival. Remembering, they share food and drink. Remember, they have banquets. There's wine. They read the book of Esther. They make noise during Haman's name to blot out even his memory, and that they remember that God sometimes works through human institutions. That God sometimes uses us just where we are to do God's will and God's work, and they remember Queen Esther. There you go. So that's lesson 27. It is good to see you. We have one more lesson in this first year. We are about 1/3 done with the confirmation program. So I will see you next week for our final lesson of year 1, in which we talk about the book of Job. You take care. Bye-bye now.